Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. In this video, I will identify the best tight ends to target for the Week 10 main slate and the top defensive special teams plays. Oftentimes, it's easy to just basically punt the tight end defensive special teams position, take that salary so that you can spend up on other positions. For me, I'm not willing to punt any position. I look at each individual position as 11% of my lineup, and as with all positions, I'm looking for value. Now, I will admit the tight end position has been very elusive through the first 9 weeks, and there's a lot of volatility from week to week. And just looking at the results from last week, I can give you an example of that. The top 5 projected tight ends in week 9 were as follows. Excuse me. Travis Kelce, number 1, followed by Darren Waller from Oakland, Hunter Henry from the Chargers, Zach Ertz from Philadelphia, and Jonnu Smith from Tennessee. Now, the actual top 5 scoring tight ends were as follows. Ertz led the way with 28.30 fantasy points. Next was Noah Fant from Denver, 23.50 fantasy points, followed by Jacob Hollister from Seattle with 19.70 fantasy points. Number 4 was Gesicki with 15.50 fantasy points, and number 5 was Hunter Henry with 15.40 fantasy points. So you see the top 5 projected. 2 of those were actually in the top 5 scoring, but there's some names in there like Fant, Hollister, and Gesicki. Not only were they not in the top 5 projected, I'm going to give you some ownership numbers. They weren't in there either. The top 5 tight ends for ownership in week 9 were Hunter Henry leading the way with 16.88% ownership, Darren Waller with 13.24% ownership, Travis Kelce with 9.10% ownership, Greg Olsen with 7.28% ownership, and Zach Ertz with 7.26% ownership. You see some of the popular names show up in projected and ownership, but as I just showed you, the scoring, and this has been the case pretty much all season long, is this position is very volatile and very hard to predict. Those top 5 scoring tight ends that I gave you, they averaged 20.48 fantasy points in week 9, and that was on an average of 6.8 targets, so just under 7 targets. I want to ask you to please follow along with me as I go through and tell you the tight ends that I'm going to target and why. I've developed this chart to hopefully make it easier. I used to do my videos and spill out a whole lot of numbers, and I realized it was hard for people to, follow along or have a visual and maybe take a couple things from the video, but this is a way that you can screenshot it. I haven't figured out if I'm able to drop a link where you can get to this, but you can screenshot it, pause the video, look at it, use it how you like. Red is obviously the worst for that particular category. Yellow is middle of the road, and green is obviously the best. Now, things like Travis Kelce's salary in red, obviously Travis Kelce isn't a bad tight end. Just that category is red. That he has the highest salary on the board at 6,400 compared to some of these other choices, 2,500 for like Red Ellison. It's just in comparison for that particular category. So the things that I use for determining the tight ends that I'm going to target, I like to look at how many targets a game they're getting, what their snap percentage is, how many fantasy points per game they're scoring, how many fantasy points their opponent is giving up to that position, what the opponent's defensive ranking is against that position. And then I also like to look at red zone targets for tight ends, especially. It's really hard to predict tight ends, but this can give you a little bit of an edge, identifying the ones that when their teams are in the red zone, they are at least getting the looks. So without further ado, these are the tight ends I'm going to target in week 10. I meant to have the names actually highlighted been doing that for all the other positions, but try to just follow along with me. I didn't do it this time, and I apologize for that. Number one, Travis Kelce is 6,400. He could be a contrarian spend up option. A lot of people, as I mentioned, try to find value at the tight end position so they can spend up and get that 10,500 for McCaffrey. Kelsey Mahomes is back this week. He's getting 8.2 targets per game, which is the best on this main slate. He's getting 91% of the snaps. He's scoring 14.5 fantasy points per game. Kind of a middle of the road matchup against Tennessee. They're ranked number 18 versus the tight end position and give up 12.4 fantasy points per game. And Kelsey has had the most red zone targets out of all the tight ends on this main slate. And I like him a lot this week because I feel like maybe Kansas City is going to be a little bit overlooked. The game total is not that high. I believe it's not the highest; it's one of the top four. But I think people might stay away from it with Mahomes kind of being an unknown and some other the couple games that have higher totals might draw a lot of interest, and they have tight ends that are a lot cheaper. So he might be contrarian based on that high salary, and that's something that I'm going to consider. But I will have some shares of him. I'll probably have him. I won't have him unless I have Mahomes in my lineup as well. But just pay attention to ownership. There's a lot of sites out there that offer that. And when I come back and do lineup building, I'll let you know where the ownership is for him at this point in time. The next tight end I'm interested in is Austin Hooper from Atlanta. He's in the game and has the second highest total on the board with 51 points versus New Orleans. He's getting just under 8 targets a game at 7.8 targets per game, 83% of the snaps. He has the highest scoring average on the main slate, scoring an average of 18.6 fantasy points per game. This game really sets up with a nice positive game script for Hooper, meaning they're a big underdog in New Orleans, and you can see the situation where Matt Ryan's going to have to throw the ball around. Julio Jones probably going to be shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore, who hasn't been great this year, but he's the best that they have. And this might actually cause passes to be funneled to Austin Hooper. And Sanu is gone as well, so he doesn't have to contend with those targets. So New Orleans isn't pretty. They're actually pretty good against the tight end. They're only giving up 9.9 fantasy points per game to the tight end, and they're ranked number 10 overall. Hooper has received 9 red zone targets, which is tied for the second best on the main slate. He's $900 cheaper than Kelsey, but I look for him to be really popular in game stacks with Ryan, Jones, Hooper, with some of the Saints, or some of the Saints, and then bringing it back with pieces of the Atlanta game. So I think his ownership will really be up there. And I might, as I talked about Travis Kelce, I feel like Kelce could be contrarian due to his salary, and he's definitely the type of player that can break a main slate wide open. He hasn't had a really big game this year, and he had a couple last year in the 40s. So have interest in both these tight ends. Next tight end I'm interested in is Andrews. So I'm interested in the top 3 there in red. Andrews is getting 7.3 targets per game. He's scoring 13.5 fantasy points per game. Cincinnati's been kind of stingy against the tight end. I think that's because they just get absolutely demolished by running games, so a lot of teams don't have to run on them. And last time these teams matched up, Jackson actually had like 236 yards passing and 152 yards rushing, so you can see not much need to go to the air. Andrews has received 7 red zone targets compared to 5 for Hayden Hurst. They do like to use a 2 tight end set. This game, they're the 10-point road favorite in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is going to be rolling out a rookie quarterback in Ryan Finley. So I like Andrews. I the price isn't really that bad. I would probably go on up to Hooper in this situation. I kind of have a feeling of this game might have what's called negative game script, meaning if Baltimore's able to control the game with their running game and their defense, and things are going bad with the rookie quarterback, because Baltimore blitzes more than any team in the NFL. That's going to be a problem for the rookie quarterback with an offensive line that is like Swiss cheese. So I'll probably have some shares of him, mainly when I'm using Lamar Jackson, but I feel like there's other values, whether going above him or below him. Next is Hawkinson from Detroit. Chicago has been getting lit up pretty good by the tight end position. They have it; they're ranked number 28 versus the tight end. They're giving up 16 fantasy points per game to the tight end. Now Hawkinson's receiving just under 5 targets per game, 4.8 targets per game, and since his first game of the season, he hasn't really done a lot, but this could be a really good spot for him. He's only 3,900, so it doesn't take much for him to get value. He has had 7 red zone targets. Chicago's going to be probably putting a lot of effort into trying to stop Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones because they don't really have a running game. But I do have a lot of interest in Hawkinson mainly based on that matchup and how Chicago has been doing against the tight end last week, and Ertz had his best game of the season against them. Next is Cameron Brate for Tampa Bay. He's 3,700. He's only receiving 3 targets a game, 39% snap percentage, but Arizona is dead last against tight end. And the thing used to be you play the tight end as playing against Arizona. And they are giving up the most fantasy points per game, 23.1 to the tight end position. There's going to be a lot of interest in Evans and Godwin. So Winston could quite possibly lean on Brate a little bit this week. And it doesn't take much to pay off that 3,700. Now, the problem is O.J. Howard's back as well. So, and Brate has received 4 targets in the red zone, and Howard has received 2 targets in the red zone. But I do like him at that price. That's not a punt. I would probably, if I'm going to use him, I'll probably use him as a piece of a game stack with the Tampa Bay, Arizona pieces. But I definitely have some interest in. I have the interest in Brate and Howard. Howard is cheaper at 3,300. He's actually receiving 81% of the snaps when he was healthy. He's only scoring 5.9 fantasy points per game. But again, there you have Arizona, who's ranked dead last against the tight end, giving up 23 fantasy points per game. And this game has the highest total on the slate. So I'd like to have a piece of that game. And here's one way of doing it: having really low salary tight ends such as Howard and Brate, and their ownership. Brate will probably be higher in ownership. People will see the difference in salary and think that he's the best bet. But I feel like OJ Howard hasn't achieved what he's actually capable of achieving, and this might be the game that they come out with 2 tight ends, and Patrick Peterson's probably going to be on Evans. Um, they do run a lot of man-to-man defense, but this might be a way for Tampa Bay to move the ball a little bit easier against Arizona. Next one I'm interested in there is from the same game and 2 receivers, Charles Clay, who is 2,900, and Max Williams, who's 2,700. Now, Arizona is number 32 against the tight end. Tampa Bay is number 31 against the tight end. They're giving up 20.7 fantasy points per game. And I could see a situation. Tampa Bay is very stingy against the run. I don't feel like Arizona is going to be able to run the ball at all. And Arizona runs a lot of plays, pretty fast paced. This game is setting up to be a fast paced game. There's going to be a lot of offensive plays. And I could see a situation where the tight ends for both these teams get involved. And I'll have some shares of these 2,900 and 2,700. It takes very little to get value, and a touchdown or two touchdown just smashes value. So I will have some exposure to those two tight ends as well. Actually, the four tight ends in that game. The problem is there's two tight ends on both teams. It's trying to figure out which one you can use. I used to like to play Charles Clay a lot when he was with Buffalo, um, but that was many moons ago, and it seems like he's pretty much fell off the wagon since then. But these salaries getting value, that's what you're shooting for. It's not just scrolling down, taking the last guy and hoping that he gets something. These guys with the highest total on the board, these tight ends are have the potential to be involved in the scoring in those games. And last is Rhett Ellison. He's 2,500, the cheapest on the main slate. There are no numbers there that would make you want to believe that he's going to be a really good matchup. And he's only getting 2.7 targets per game, but that's with Evan Ingram in. And Evan Ingram is not playing tomorrow. And Sterling Shepard's not playing tomorrow. So they have Tate and Barkley. Those targets have to go somewhere. And this is in the game against Dallas. Jones was targeting Ellison quite a bit in that game. And 2,500, just as I was talking about Clay and Williams, it's real easy to pay off value with a few targets, and touchdown just smashes it. So I'll definitely have some exposure to Ellison. I won't be rolling him out in a game stack because I don't have very interest in that game overall. But I will have some exposure to him. I don't use tight ends in my flex normally, so I probably wouldn't be doing that. But I will have some exposure to Ellison. I like tight ends as part of the stacks from the games that have the higher totals, or against teams that funnel points to the tight ends. Teams that lock down wide receivers pretty good seem to give up a lot more fantasy points to the tight end position. So summing up, these are the tight ends I'm going to be targeting in week 10. Travis Kelce, Austin Hooper, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, Brait and Howard from Tampa Bay, Clay and Williams from Arizona, and Rhett Ellison from the Giants. Now let's take a look at the defensive special teams to target in week 10. But first, let's recap the top defensive special teams in week 9. The top 5 projected defensive special teams in week 9 were as follows: Bills, Jets, Bears, Panthers, and Seahawks. The actual top 5 scoring defensive special teams were as follows: the Steelers, who scored 19 fantasy points, Panthers, who scored 11, Colts, Bills, and Dolphins all scored 8. If you look at the ownership, the Bills were number one at 17.39%, their matchup last week, and I believe they were the most expensive on the main slate. Followed up the Redskins, they were 15.91. I believe they were the lowest defense last week, so that might be why they had such high ownership. I believe they were like 1,800. The Panthers, who had 12.77 ownership. Steelers, who had 11.82% ownership and actually ended up being the highest scoring on the main slate. And the Browns, who scored 11.28 fantasy points. So The top scoring, see, the Bills were in the top scoring, the Steelers were in, Panthers. So three of the top five in ownership were in the top five in scoring as well. It's kind of odd to see the Dolphins in there, but with their win against the Jets, that's what helped them. And four of the five top scoring defenses actually won their game straight up, and the only one that didn't was playing the team that led the way, and that was the Steelers Colts. But both of them had a defense that was in the top five. I like the large favorites to target for defensive special teams because what they're saying is these teams are going to be behind by a fair amount, which means they're probably going to have to throw the ball a lot, get into catch up mode. When you're throwing the ball a lot and rushing, and all kinds of things can go bad. Sacks, sack fumble, interceptions, defensive special team touchdowns, all kinds of things happen. You're passing, and then if you have a rookie quarterback, which some of these teams do this week, then you sometimes expect really erratic plays, which result in all kinds of misfortunate things happening to that team. So these are the defensive special teams that I'm going to be targeting in week 10, and then I'm going to tell you why. I don't have a chart to break this down. It's kind of hard because, I mean, you're just looking at sacks, fumbles, interceptions, and things like that. But there's so much variance from week to week, depending on the matchups and all that. It's really hard to get the defense special team right. I've had a lot of luck the last 3 or 4 weeks, nailing it pretty close. Last week I was real high on the Panthers, and they were tied for third overall. And I had the Bills as well. That was pretty much a no-brainer. But teams that are favorites, especially the big favorites, um, are the ones that should be in game situations where the other team has to put the ball in the air to catch up. We know that doesn't happen every time, but Vegas isn't in the business of just giving away money, so I have a lot of faith in the game lines and totals. So the first defense I'm going to be targeting this week is Baltimore. They're the most expensive on the board at 4,000. I really, really hate paying 4,000 or more for defense because that's a position player salary. But in this case, I can kind of justify it. You have Baltimore on the road, a 10-point favorite, playing against a team that is starting a rookie quarterback for his first NFL start. Sure, he's going to be excited, but excitement only goes so far. The Baltimore blitzes more than any team in the NFL, and I look for them to come after him. And he was a really accurate quarterback in college, but there's also a reason he was picked in the fourth round. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Brady was picked in the sixth round, and that only happens every now and then. But so we'll see. But I really think they're going to come after him, and I don't think it's going to be good. AJ Green has already been ruled out. He's been out the entire season, which means they're going to focus on shutting down Boyd. He's not going to have time to probably get the ball down the field. And I look for him to try to dump the ball off to Mixon a lot tomorrow out of the backfield, but Baltimore's been pretty good against that. So we'll see, but I will definitely have some shares of Baltimore in my defense special teams position. Next is the Colts. They're 3,500. They're 11-point home favorite. Very opportunistic defensive special teams. They are going to have higher ownership. They're $500 cheaper than Baltimore. Miami has been losing a lot of players. Now they're without Preston Williams and Walton. So this could go south real fast for Miami and Indianapolis. They're also a home favorite, double-digit points too, 10 points. So I just see that the thing this year that has a lot of people have done is you play the defense that's playing against Miami. And here we are, and they're in a bad position. They're coming off their first win of the year, and they might be a little bit flat. And Indianapolis defense has been, as I mentioned, very opportunistic, and I like that price, and I'll have some shares of them. Third is the Bears. They're 3,100. Recency bias is probably going to drop their ownership, which I'm hoping for. I feel like the Bears are due for a good defensive game. They haven't performed very well at all this year, but you have Detroit coming in Chicago, small favorite. Chicago's small favorite at home. I just feel that they're sneaky, and I like the Bears a lot this week at home, especially for 3,100. And last is Tampa Bay. They're 2,700. Home favorite, facing a rookie quarterback. I know it's Kyle Murray, but it's still a rookie quarterback. A lot of passing, a lot of plays, a lot of opportunities for defensive special team fantasy points because there'll definitely probably be some mishaps in there somewhere. I just like the opportunity when there's a lot of plays. There's just a lot of opportunities for things to not only go good, but also go wrong, especially when you have a rookie at quarterback. I usually keep my defense special team interests small, and I try to have a spend up option, a middle of the road option, and a spend down option. This week, I actually have a couple spend downs with the Bears and Tampa Bay. Um, Again, my defenses that I'm going to be targeting are Baltimore at $4,000, the Colts at 3,500, the Bears at 3,100, and Tampa Bay at 2,700. All those are home teams except for Baltimore, and I just feel like Baltimore is a no-brainer, and that could definitely be some sacks, and if they get down, then they're going to have to throw to try to catch up. Now you're putting a rookie quarterback under pressure, and all signs show to that's being a really good spot for Baltimore's defense. But he might come out and be the next Joe Namath. Who knows? But I will have some shares, and I'm willing to live for another day if I'm wrong with Baltimore's defense. I want to thank you for joining me. Again, I encourage you to drop any opinions or comments below. Some things that you'd like to see with the chart, or you feel that I can do better, or some other statistics that you might be interested in that might help you a little bit better. I encourage you to take a screenshot of this, or pause the video and look at it and use it how you like. Some really good numbers there. If you would do me a favor and please share this video, like it, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I really appreciate it. My subscriptions have been trending upwards, which is really good. I appreciate you guys following me. You can also follow me on Twitter at winning about. I post my videos there as well and put just different NFL stuff on there as well. I will be coming back shortly to do the lineup building. I built some lineups with the use of an optimizer as well. I'm going to look at some ownerships, do game by game breakdown, put some winning stuff together with the research that I've done this week. Again, I appreciate you joining me. I will be back shortly. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports. My name is Ty Patton, and I'll see you again real soon.